The last woman to allegedly have a freak off with Diddy.
But then the moments where she felt slighted by him because of his relationships with multiple women.
Blasted in court. Jane Doe saying that she was forced to have sex with up to 11 men in rotation against her will.
And sometimes it seemed like they were with it, and other times it seemed like they were not with it.
But some of the text messages that she was horny for him and wanted to get slutty and down and dirty paint a different picture.
All right, we have our reporters, our TSR reporters, Brianne, Deville, and Saran Tarawaley here. They've been on ground from the beginning. Ladies, catch us up on week 5. We heard a marathon testimony from Jane Doe. What did she say?
Jane Doe spoke a lot about her relationship with Diddy, the ups, the downs, the moments where he helped her with her business, giving her $20,000 to invest, but then the moments where she felt slighted by him because of his relationships with multiple women.
Wow, wow. So, I mean, let's talk about it. She was getting $10,000 a month in rent from him. Also, it was reported, she testified that he paid for her veneers as well. So there were gifts. There was what, a Chanel bag, I heard, a Bottega Veneta bag as well. And so there were gifts involved. There was money involved. She was getting her rent paid. And so that is what the defense said. Like, hey, listen, you were receiving these gifts. But at the same time, prosecutors were also trying to drive home the fact that he was dangling these things over her head to get her to do these certain sex acts. So there's kind of a divide, right?
Yeah, but it's not only just about the fact that she received them. She's actually currently still receiving some of those gifts till this day. Diddy is paying for her attorney fees, and he is also still currently paying her rent. So all of that was revealed on the stand this week in very explosive testimony.
In court, have you seen Jane Doe? What is her demeanor like? We've been hearing that she's been in tears at some point. Catch us up on what it's like being in there with her.
Yeah, she's been seen on the stand very, very emotional through certain parts of her testimony, tears for sure. She's definitely had a little bit of a tug of war, especially with the defense. There were a couple instances where she couldn't really answer their questions, but she might come back with a very quick comeback, and the judge kind of had to regroup and say, "Hey, Jane, if you're able, just please answer the questions." We had a couple of those instances. So I think it's quite an emotional ride, as one can imagine, to be on that stand. But again, the prosecution had one point to prove, the defense had another point to prove. So she was kind of being pulled back and forth through the emotions, whether it be sadness, crying, or even sometimes frustration and anger.
In some cases, there was a voice note that she said, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm not a porn star. I'm not an animal. I need a break. But in other instances, she's saying, let's get down and dirty. Let's have these nights where we can get slutty. What are you doing, baby? I'm trying to get horny for you. I want you to be horny for me. So these kind of text messages, I'm sure can confuse a jury.
Jane was definitely a complex character. They had moments where she would vocalize not wanting to do these freak offs. She spoke a lot about via text message of her just not wanting to be involved in the sexual acts with other men. She just wanted to be with Diddy. And I think that that was probably one of the main differences between her testimony and Cassie's testimony, because she often frequently vocalized these things via text message. I think there was about like one text message that we saw in the courtroom of Cassie vocalizing that she did not want to do a freak off. And then, of course, her added testimony to that. But there were so many different instances where Jane was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Look at what's happening to me. I'm vomiting after these freak offs. I'm having an outward reaction. I don't want to do this anymore. And he would ultimately like brush it off and tell her to get on her job.
She testified that Diddy would fly her to Turks and Caicos, New York, Miami, 90% of the time, she would be, quote, forced to have these hotel nights. The lights were red, similar to Cassie. The lights had to be dimly lit, red. The rooms were stocked with baby oil, 2 dozen bottles per night. Hair had to be in a ponytail. She had creamy white nails. Then the escort would come in and they would do their thing. And then also we're hearing too, she testified that he threatened to expose maybe some of their sex tapes or threatened to withhold that $10,000 a month rent. So that's where we can get in the weeds a little bit with some of those criminal charges and how maybe there is coercion here.
Yeah, I think that Diddy definitely, the prosecution is trying to present this case that Diddy definitely used his power, his money, and his influence to control these women, not just Cassie, but Jane as well. And I think to Saren's point, yes, there was a lot more vocalizing on Jane's end that she didn't want to do this, but there was also a lot of vocalizing on her end that she did want to do these things and that she liked these things. She enjoyed these things. And toward the end of her time on the stand, the defense poked a lot of holes in that. They pulled up audio messages and text messages and things where she was telling, or, scheduling escorts on her own, or, telling them that she loved, spending time with them and being intimate with them. So I think it's really just a toss up. I think Jane, like Saren said, it's just very complex witness, who had a very tumultuous relationship with Diddy, who had a very jealous relationship with Diddy, similar to Cassie. I think one of the biggest caveats, though, in their relationship was that Diddy was very candid with her that he was not a one-woman man, that he was going to sleep with other women, that he was going to date other women, and that kind of wasn't her business.
We heard voice notes from Diddy as well, several of them. And, the defense brought these up because it's Diddy pretty much saying, move on. I want you not to live this way. I don't want us to have a relationship this way. Do you feel like that helped the defense's case?
Yeah, I think the defense is kind of turning things over in their favor with these voice notes from Diddy and also just the text messages as well. They brought up an instance where Jane and Diddy had a physical altercation, and, they spoke about both of them leaving that physical altercation safely, that they were able to leave, and, really drilling in on this point that Diddy allowed her the space to leave, but she wanted to be with this man. She wanted to be in his space as his partner, and she wasn't really getting that, once she saw that he was, spending time with other women. There was also another instance where they tried to show, she was engaging in these activities even without Diddy being present. There was a trip to Vegas in 2024, where Jane went on a trip with another rapper and his wife, and there was a freak off happening there. There was a male escort that was, engaging in intercourse with another woman, and that really did make Diddy very jealous. And so, the defense brought that up just to try to drive it home and say, Jane enjoyed these things. She wanted to be a part of this life, whether that was with Diddy or without Diddy.
Also, we heard from Justin Miller. He's an attorney that we've been sitting down with to break things down. He also talked about Jane Doe's testimony, how he felt about it, and also Diddy's recent mistrial attempt as well. This is the second one. Take a listen. Attorney Miller, I think there's a fine line. It's like coercion, or were you just a part of this lifestyle? And I feel like that is a burden that the prosecutors have to get through.
Yeah, it's really hard because are these people victims or are they willing participants? Or is it some mixture of the two? And that's what I think that the jury is going to have to decide at the end. Because when you start talking about, text messages, this is why the defense shows all these messages and the voicemails from Diddy, because it shows that he had a relationship with these women. And this relationship was one of, we're going to have hotel nights or freak offs together. And sometimes it seemed like they were with it, and other times it seemed like they were not with it. And when you start bringing in drugs and things of that nature, you start bringing in the power dynamic where you say, okay, listen, I have more power than you. I can control your destiny as it relates to your career. I can control your money as it relates to me paying rent in your home. That gives him power over them.
This motion for mistrial, does it have any warrant?
There are several reasons for this. When you request a mistrial, when you file for a mistrial, the judge can deny it, but you also are securing your right to appeal if the trial doesn't go the way Diddy wants. So if you don't lodge your objection, if you don't say, hey, should be a mistrial, these people are doing this and this is wrong, then you can't bring it up later.
All right, that does it for us this weekend. Week 6 is ahead with reports saying that prosecutors may be resting their case at the end of week 6. So stay tuned for that. And as a legal note as well, we do want you to know that Sean P. Diddy Combs has pleaded not guilty to all these federal charges against him. Stay with the Shade Room as we continue to follow this both on ground and online. For now, I'm Justin Carter. This is a TSR Investigate special report, Trial Watch.
Hello, roommates, and thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Do you want more TSR Investigates? Be sure to subscribe and check us out at theshaderoom.com.